All right. Hey guys, Tyler here from Return on Podcast. Thank you for joining today's episode. And I, I just want to be honest with you. I've now started a couple of businesses, and all 100%, all of my most expensive mistakes have been people related mistakes, right? Either I've waited too long to make a hire, or made the wrong hire, or didn't create the right, opportunity for someone to be successful, or maybe they just weren't successful and we had to let them go. Had one instance where I over promoted someone that I feel like cost me tons of money. In other words, getting the people side of our businesses correct is not just crucial, but it's actually really difficult. And so, if that's been a challenge for you, if you've reached a spot in your business where you're like, okay, boy, I need help and I don't want to screw this up, I just think this episode is for you. Isaac Smith from TeamUp is really an expert at how do you create the kind of ecosystem that people want to work in, and then kind of getting a little bit more tactical. What does it look like to really, get into those hiring discussions, find the right people for you, and then again, you want to retain them. If you invest a lot in hiring people, you want to keep them on your team. So if that at all kind of sounds like you, stay tuned for this interview with Isaac Smith. You're going to love it. It's time to maximize profitability and cash flow. It's time to learn habits and hacks from the best eCom CEOs. It's time for Return on Podcast with me, Tyler Jefcoat. All right, guys, I'm excited today to bring in my friend Isaac Smith from TeamUp. Isaac, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
Oh man, I love talking about the things that you and I are going to get to talk about today on the show, because I think it doesn't matter what business type we're in. I mean, I was in a healthcare business prior to this. You and I have both been in the accounting business before, and we've both probably had jobs, right? I had a couple of jobs in my day. I'm sure you have too. But at every single stop, as soon as your hat includes a leadership element, then getting people right, getting the who's correct in your business are just really important. And I view you as being kind of just a real expert at how to do that. So thank you for joining the show today, man.
Absolutely.
So we got we
Yeah.
got some real interesting, I think, discussions I want to have with you related to building culture and hiring people. Before we do that, just give us a little bit of your journey. How did you? I always ask people, what went wrong where you decided to dump whatever the job was and build your first company?
What went wrong? Oh man, everything went wrong. No, it's funny. I was an architect actually,
Oh wow.
designing buildings. Yep. So if anybody out there is in Fort Worth or Dallas, the Dickies Arena where the rodeo is held, I was on the design team for that.
There we go.
Um, what went wrong? Yeah, actually, it's funny. I worked at three different firms in my 8-year career, and the middle one was awful.
Mm.
That's where we worked. I worked on the arena. For many reasons, we could get into that whole story, but basically, yeah, I was miserable, and so I thought, oh, you know what? I should go get a job with a different firm, and that'll make everything better. And it did temporarily, right?
I
It was like it was the perfect place to work, but over the course of the next 4 years, I just discovered I'm not meant to be here.
mm,
And for many reasons, architecture isn't the right thing for me. Even though I was good at it, I was passionate about it. It's just there was a lot else that came with it. Um, and then also, I discovered I really hate working for other people. Doesn't matter how nice they are, I just hate it.
yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a perfect job for someone who wanted to be an architect, but I just had to get out. So
Mm,
I thought, well, e-commerce, that's going to be the thing, right? So that then began my entrepreneurial journey through e-commerce, building some businesses. I sold one, and then eventually, I'm making this very short, but I decided I wanted to help other e-commerce business owners, kind of like you, with knowing their numbers, and so I started a bookkeeping business. Um, and then a few years after that, I learned that accountants really needed help finding great staff because there's an accounting shortage, or a staffing shortage. And so I had built my team in the Philippines. And so that kind of naturally led sort of organically to helping the accountants build their teams in the Philippines. So that's what I'm focused on now. So it's been a kind of a crazy winding journey, and I've made all the mistakes. And yeah, it's really fun to be involved with the people part of the business.
So recently, Isaac, really recently, a week or two ago, finished a book by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. I think the guy's name is Ben Hardy, called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
Mm.
And a couple of questions that I feel like he was really challenging me with as I was reading that book were kind of what I feel like I just heard you describe. Hey, can you have the courage to take a look at your current job or situation and identify what's the 20% of this that I really love, that really gives me energy today? And how can I make the right moves to kind of reorient my life around that 20%. So like when I hear someone like you be like, hey, I loved doing this, but then I realized, ooh, here's a way to kind of serve, and let me lean into
Mm-hmm.
this as hard as I can. And then realize, ooh, I still love this, but there's this small fraction of that something that really gets my gets the energy up for me. And I respect that a lot. I think understanding when to pivot specifically for the question, what is it that I want in my life right now? What is
Yeah.
it that gives me joy? And yeah, I got that sense the first time I met you a couple years ago, Isaac. I think that's something I really respect about you. Do you feel like, let me just ask you, do you feel like that's something that's always kind of been like a natural kind of attribute of yours as a worker? Is like, man, I just tend to like kind of be really clear on what I want. And I kind of don't have issues having courage to pull the trigger, or is this something you feel like you've kind of evolved into over the years?
Oh my gosh. I will leap off the edge. But my wife needs some more convincing. So this is crazy. So when I was getting really miserable in the architecture career, here's a good example. I was like, I would be walking home and be a beautiful day. Um, from a day of work going home, I take the metro. This is Washington, D.C. area. Get off, and I walk through this beautiful tree-lined streets, beautiful old houses, and you should be super happy at that point. But it's strange. I had this vision of like I'm in a burning building,
Mm,
and why is nobody pulling the fire alarm?
okay.
Um, that's what it felt like to me. Um, and so it would the there is no question that something has to change here. And so so I thought, okay, I'm going to start an e-commerce business, and that's going to solve all the problems. I'm going to be very successful. I'm going to make us rich, right? That's what I told my wife. And so somehow I convinced her, and she believes me. And I still feel a little bad about this. Um, she believed me so I convinced her, hey, let's both quit our jobs. Let's sell our condo. Let's sell
What could
all of
go
our
wrong?
furniture,
Yeah.
and let's drive across the country and move in with my parents in Washington State. And then I'll be an entrepreneur and I'll be very successful. Well, that didn't quite happen that way. but does it's just what I end up doing. And I'm so grateful to my wife for going along with all my crap.
Yeah. I really resonate with that part of your story. I was in kind of my same Fortune 100 kind of corporate job and was good at it, but it wasn't very life giving for me. And right as my wife had quit her job, because our firstborn was just coming into the world, and we're like, hey, Emily wanted to take a year to be with our new daughter. I was like,
Hmm.
babe, I think I need to join this investor and start this company in an industry I've never worked in. And I have no
Hmm.
experience. And it was kind of similar. I'm like, well, what do you think? And to her credit, she was like, I think we should do it. I think there's something here. And so if any of you guys out there have ever started a business, which most people that will listen to this podcast probably have, you go and you like start a spreadsheet, or you like do some kind of a like vision for the future, and everything's always like roses and rainbows and up and to the right
Hmm.
forever and perpetuity. I'm like, man, if I'm going to be rich next year, imagine how 10x rich I'm going to be in 10 years, because nothing can
Yeah.
ever go wrong. And things, of course, inevitably do go wrong. And thankfully with that first company, we were able to overcome enough of those challenges to sell it in 2017 and um, make a little bit of money and build this company. But it is kind of funny how we're like, you have to be a little bit delusional to get into
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, Isaac. Like if we really sat down and had great visibility into how hard it is to build a company that's successful, we'd never do it.
Seriously, yeah, this is now for me, it's 10 years later. And um, it did not go to plan. And so if you had told me I would have all those failures, I probably would say, dang it, I guess I'll have to figure something else out.
Yeah,
But I'm happy to be here now,
right.
but it was not what I expected.
So speaking of overcoming failures, this is a good segue into our discussion for today. So you and I laughed about this before we hit record here, but all of my most expensive errors as a business owner have been hiring errors. Maybe one promoting error that I'm thinking about, but they're people. People are really crucial in businesses. They get when my company we went from zero to like 115 or so employees in about 4.5 years, and
Wow,
I can count on one hand. So you think about it, when you hire that level of
that's a
scale,
lot.
and
Yeah.
your company does this for a lot of companies now, right? I mean, the idea of having to hire 300 people over the course of 5 years to get the people that stick, and you have turnover and this and the other. But I can count on one hand the 5 hires that really created 7 figures of problems for us, like, right. And so in this, and kind of played out in the accounting world as well, where I knew I had problems that needed to be solved by people, and it just has been a long process of me becoming a mature enough hirer, or mature enough operator to make good choices and frankly create a place that people want to work at. So I mean, this is
That's
the
key
discussion I
right
want to have.
there. Yeah.
So help us. Like, you're in the moment. You're, whether it's Tyler 10 years ago or another entrepreneur out there, and you say, I need help. My business is going to need to have a person in it that isn't
Yeah.
me. Isaac, how do you advise entrepreneurs to kind of start that journey and kind of develop what needs to be developed if I'm going to go hire somebody?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, but I think a couple of big picture important things to start is one is don't just start thinking about this when you have an emergency, when
Right.
you're so busy that you just, oh my gosh, I just can't keep up and we're going to die. And okay, now I need to get somebody in here quick, because that is recipe for disaster. That, I mean, even if you do everything right, at that point, it's really hard to make things work. And for example, so we work with accountants, of course. A lot of these lessons can be, they're lessons that can apply to all industries. But in this particular example, there's an accountant. And when I talked to him, he said, my hair's on fire. Those are his actual words that he said to me. So, as you can imagine, Tyler, can imagine, right? There's the tax season is going on. We're recording this right in the last week of it. Um, but for everybody else, you may or may not know, accountants are just crazy, crazy busy during, especially March and April. And yeah, he's told me my hair is on fire. And he said, I just need somebody to come in here and help. And so that should have been a red flag to me. But we did. We brought somebody to him to help him. But and then about a month later, I get an email saying, Isaac, this isn't going well. There's all these problems. And I say, okay, let's talk. And so he tells me the issues, and okay, well, then what happened? Tell me about the first week. He said, oh, I didn't even talk to her the first week. Like, oh, I see the problem here. And I said, well, you have to make time, right? But he says, I just don't have time. And that's a tough spot to be in. And frankly, I don't know what the answer to that is. You're going to have to make some tough decisions, but none of this is going to work in under those circumstances.
Yes, well, just to speak to that, because I do think that's a pretty common. People really, I can remember some moments where I felt that way, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
which which side of the burning plane do I work on right now? Like, you know what I mean? Because everything's on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the thing that's helped me, just in case anyone out there is in that spot, I think Dan Martell wrote a book called "Buy Back Your Time," and this idea of okay, if I could force myself in the middle of chaos to
Mhm.
pause for a half day
Mhm.
and really make a list. He calls it an energy audit. If I can make a list of all the things that are occupying my time and my energy, maybe over the course of the last couple weeks, and I just need to be critical about what are the things that my time is being used for that are sucking the joy and the life out of me,
Mhm.
and what are the things that are going to be relatively inexpensive for me to get someone else to do. And that could either be inexpensive because I have a great process, or it could be inexpensive because you don't have to have a tremendous level of skill to nail this particular function. And so for me, I just that's because I'm an accountant. I need to think about things fairly logically, but that's been my MO, is to be like, okay,
Mhm.
I need relief, but I can't create relief unless I slow down long enough to really kind of diagnose where my company is. All right, looks like I have a pile of tasks that fall under the would be fairly easy to train and would give me life and joy and energy back as a leader. Let's make that pile of tasks into the first job description and let's go get
Mhm.
it. And um, the second thing, and if I was talking to your accountant buddy that you were mentioning there, is this is your fault, pal. The fact that your hair's on fire is your fault, and it's
Yeah.
not going to get better unless you take full ownership of it. And you're probably not going to. You've made some promises that you're probably going to have to unmake in
Yeah.
order to not be a chaotic mess here for the rest of your career. And go ahead, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm gonna say something that I think, entrepreneurs and business owners don't wanna hear, they don't wanna do, um, but sometimes you have to slow it down a bit, and sometimes that costs you money.
Yeah.
But, if you don't, I mean, maybe you can make it work, but like you said, you have to at least have a pause, and then if
Mm,
you bring somebody in, you have to spend time with that person,
yeah.
um and if you can't, then even if you try and do it, it's just not gonna work, and
Mm,
and and you're gonna have wasted all of that additional energy and time you've spent on doing that thing that didn't work.
love it. So, anything that you would the question that I'm gonna ask you is this: what does it take to make a good hire? And I just wanna kinda let this be take it any direction you want to. What is it that you think are kind of the crucial elements to making a good hire?
Well, it starts with the vision,
Okay.
as any business book, if you read enough business books, you find out they're all telling you they're saying the same things.
Right.
Um, yeah, it starts with the vision. What is it that you're trying to do here? And then how does this role that you're hiring for fit into that? And then the next part, and that part is obvious, but the next part is, I think, um, what people don't put enough thought into, and that is, what do you have to offer? And I don't mean salary and benefits. I mean, are you nice? Um, is this a growing company that, if this person that you hire does well, is there other opportunities that they could grow into?
Mm,
Um, and what is your culture like? So we all know, we've all heard hire for attitude. Um, but for some reason, nobody actually does it. That's something that I'm trying to help with. Is you think that you're going to hire somebody with a great attitude, but then, of course, you just look at the resume and you get zeroed in onto all the experience and all of that. So um, I think it's important at the beginning to think about, to slow down and actually write it down on paper or in a Word doc or something like that, Google Doc. What is the vision for the company? Where are you going? What's the opportunity here? What is your culture? What are your values? And then, who is this ideal type of person? Do you know anybody in your life who maybe they wouldn't want this job, but would be really good. So then actually write down what are that person's character traits. Is it like a life of the party kind of person? Is this like a really chill kind of person? Is this really analytical? Someone who can think on their feet? Like these are all different people I'm describing. So get really clear on which one of those would be perfect. And I think that will help. If you get that, that will help all the rest come so much better.
Yeah, I love it. One thing I want to kind of highlight there that you said that, you and we have direct experience in both e-commerce and in accounting, and both of those kind of industries they have a bit of a reputation for, uh, sometimes it can be hard to feel like you're on a mission that matters. And I just want to encourage guys out there, every single client the seller accountant serves, and then my company, seller accountant, and Isaac's company, right? I mean, we're not, I don't know. There are lots of businesses who are like, hey, we're like saving the planet and here's the mission and we're
Yeah.
doing it. It's big, right? Or we're reinventing the universe, whatever that looks like. It matters that you and me, Isaac, or whoever listened to this, slow down enough to understand the hero of our story and how we make her life better. And I think I've never once met a business, and we've helped some weird ass businesses, dude. There's some weird stuff going on out there that people sell online, but if you peel back the layers enough, you can find a why that matters. And I think,
Mhm.
to your point, that why that matters is the contagious part of your DNA that will make it compelling for people to want to work with you, because it can't just be, and I'm saying this as an accountant, right? Like it can't be spreadsheets and commas and dollar signs for very long. Some of the most miserable people I've ever met are like kind of Wall Street oriented guys that make lots of money that have never found a way to connect why they do things
Mm.
they do. And so, yeah, I mean, anything else you want to say about that, about kind of formulating your culture before you get into hiring?
Yeah, I think two things. I was listening to a podcast yesterday about somebody who was stuck in his business, couldn't really get himself to take it to that next level. And it was, of course, as we all know, this is all a mental game as business
Yeah.
owners. And um, they really tackled a topic that has been kind of I've been wrestling with for a few years, which is, like what is the why? And it seems like for some reason these days, like everything has to have this enormous purpose. But like, can't it just be that I have a fun business that does something useful? What's wrong with that?
Right.
And so
Right.
I think, and what they were talking about was the guy was setting himself up for failure because he's always falling short of saving the world, and
Right.
that's not what he's here to do. He
Hmm.
had a it's actually oh, I forget his last name. Neil Parekh, I think, was the guy being interviewed. He's somebody I've talked with. I know him. He has made this like a home cleaning service franchise. So it's like, that's not going to save the world, but it can be pretty a great business that can provide a valuable service to people, right? And so
Yeah.
what's wrong with that? And so I think the same thing is here. It's true here. So, if you're listening, you're selling some product. I don't know what the product is, but like, let's just say, Tyler, you and me, have bookkeeping businesses or accounting businesses, right? Yeah, accounting is not going to save the world either. But if you do if you as an accounting provider do a good job, what impact does that make for the business and the business owner? Does that allow them to grow? Does that impact their families? Does that allow them to hire more people? Is hiring more people a good thing? Does that do a good thing in their lives? Yes, 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 all down the line. And so when I hire a bookkeeper, right? A lot of times bookkeepers, you know, they, you know, they are bookkeepers for a reason because they like it.
Right.
But it's reconciling transactions. It's, that how do you introduce that purpose there? Well, just think that through. Like, if you do a good job here, what's the impact there, and then there,
Yep.
and then there? I think that's like, that's all you need.
Yep.
And believe me, that sounds trite, but I see it in my team. They're really excited. What people want is a connection to, they want a connection from, they want to connect what they're doing to the actual impact. And if you can make that visible, people are going to be so much more fulfilled in their work
Yep.
with you.
So good. So good. Guys, I think you got to start there. And there's so much that Isaac and I could talk about. I mean, tactics, but something you mentioned early on that I want to kind of double click on because I know it's really close to your expertise here is often we're going through that experience of deciding we need help. We're trying to do it before our hair catches on fire. And we need we need a way to hire people that and we maybe can't afford our local population, or we don't feel like there's a good talent pool. That's something you and I deal with a lot in accounting. Is just finding competent
Yeah.
accountants is really, really hard in the States right now. And
Mhm.
so something that I think you've been really successful with is just developing kind of remote Filipino teams in particular, but there may be some other countries. But my question is like, what do you think what do you think the keys are to keeping good people? Not just hiring, but keeping good people on
Ooh.
your team when they're not sitting next to you in a cubicle?
Yes, this is my favorite topic.
Okay.
Um, so many people think, they have a problem, they hire somebody to solve that problem, and maybe they've hired someone incredible and amazing and perfect, and they think, "Ah, yes, my job is done, problem solved, don't
Mm,
have to worry about it." No, no, no. Your job is, when you're a business owner, your primary job, in my opinion, yes, of course, marketing and sales and product development are all important. But if you can't maintain your company, which is what people do, then you're ultimately not going to have success, right? So keeping the great people that you've hired is just as, if not more important than finding those people in the first place. So, um, yeah, the things that we've already gone over, if you can do those things well, you can get somebody's buy-in. But over time, I mean, the rest is really building and expanding and reinforcing that relationship and building trust over time. So it just takes time and intention. And like you said, when we're remote, which I'm assuming a lot of people listening, their teams will be remote.
sure.
Um, Obviously, we don't have those water cooler moments. We don't go to lunch, stuff like that. So you have to actually be intentional about it and build in time to build the relationship. So here's just a couple tips. For example, these days we have so many great productivity tools and communication tools that it's been really exciting for me in my business in the last year. We don't actually need to talk about work very much because we're communicating in different ways. We're communicating asynchronously. We've got Slack, we've got ClickUp, we've got Loom. And so, like, most of the things that you would talk about in a meeting handle elsewhere. Or and so then that means when we actually do have our meetings, I want to have a weekly staff meeting with everybody, and I also want to have weekly one-on-ones with everyone who reports to me. We end up just chit-chatting about weekends and kids and hobbies and everything except work, usually, because we don't need to. And so, yeah, build that relationship, get to know them. Do they have kids? What are their hobbies? All that stuff. It's pretty simple when, you know, if you think about it, but you actually just do need to think about it.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it sounds like it is. I was laughing with a friend of mine yesterday about this. So I have two siblings and two step siblings. So there's five of us total. And the funny thing is that my one sister who's currently living in Europe, I probably talk to her more often than everybody else, and I love everybody. We all get along. But the only difference is that with Shelby, we actually have a like standing appointment on my Google Calendar that pops up at
Mm,
7:30 Eastern time every Thursday morning. And the point is that like I think sometimes I can fall into the trap of thinking that, planning and being intentional kind of like kills spontaneity, or maybe there's no heart in it. But that's actually not true. Like I think being intentional to reach out to people that matter. And as a business owner, to your point, one of the most important functions that a CEO has is to be the holder of culture and the protector of the relationships within
mhm.
the company. So anyway, this is just a hack I want to share with you guys. It's kind of funny how easily it works. Is if this is something you struggle with, like maybe you have a handful of virtual teammates, or whether they're in the States or abroad, um, like literally just create a recurring calendar invite on whatever your software is that says
Mhm.
call Isaac. And I
Yep.
think the trick is to call Isaac with no agenda, just to call him and say, "Hey, buddy, how you doing? How's life? What's been significant for you this week? Anything got you worried? Anything you want to connect on, on a real human level?" And I think magical things happen. Those relationships tend to get better. They tend to become, closer relationships. And so, for what it's worth, if you're looking for the easiest hack ever, just set a reminder, like automate the reminder so you can't forget, and then just execute, pull the trigger of making the phone call or having the Zoom call. Obviously, if your team's across the world, you may have to be a little bit more intentional. Like for instance, we've really tried to implement like happy hours or office
Yeah.
hours where we're just kind of working at the same time, which is never 100% convenient for everybody when you have teammates on three
Mhm.
continents. But it's worth the effort to create connection where we're doing something meaningful together. And I'm sure you would amen to that, right? I mean, yeah,
Oh,
just
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like you say, that's what I do. Putting something on the calendar recurring, and it has we use Google Meet, so the Google Meet link is there, and we just show up every week. Um, and if you're listening and you're busy, you think, well, maybe I have a lot of staff. Maybe I don't have time for all of this. And maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe you have too many people reporting to you. If you read those business books, I think they'll say you should never, ever have more than 5 or 6 people reporting to you.
Yep.
And if you do, there's a problem, and you should figure out a way for them to report to someone else.
And frankly, if you are more of a visionary type personality, that number needs to be even smaller. So what I found is,
Mhm.
as my company, both companies, as they've grown, because I'm the kind of high energy visionary CEO type, I really need to have like two direct
Yeah.
reports. I really need to have maybe three. And it's because I'm not a very effective manager at scale. I need to have a
Hmm.
system. Like we really are big fans of implementing EOS in our company, because that gives me the power to provide direction for a larger team without me doing a one-to-one. All right, what did you do this week? Where do you need
Yeah.
help? Because that's not my strength,
That's
Isaac.
brutal. I
Yeah,
can't do that either. You tell me about your tasks. Oh, you have lost my attention.
man. And the fact that I hate it means I'm not a very effective, because some people like really need your attention to be on creating accountability.
Yeah.
But buddy, does that suck the joy out of my life. And so that'll be a lot of entrepreneurs out there. Like you're trying to hire, and all of a sudden you find that you have like 9 direct reports. You've done something wrong that may require your attention. And creating an accountability chart and having meetings that have the right people in them, and using systems to create accountability. And then, you get to like I get to call people on my team now, and they don't report to me, and I don't have to worry about whether they did their checklist. I get to worry about,
Mhm.
kind of to your point, Isaac, like how's life? What's creating meaning for you right now? What's robbing you of joy right now? How's your family? And those because I need those, by the way. Like I'm a social creature. Like I need to be
Mhm.
real with people, and life's too short to work with people I don't like working with, right? And so like I just want to encourage you guys out there as you take Isaac's advice and kind of process what you need, and then try to make a hire. Try to create a place where the honest answer. Here's the question I had to wrestle with a couple weeks ago, Isaac. If I didn't own this company, would I work here? Is this the
Yeah.
kind of environment, the kind of ecosystem where that's a hell yes for me? And if I'm honest, there's been moments over the past what decade or so of my entrepreneurial journey where maybe the answer is no. I'm like, I don't know. Like during that particular quarter, I'm not sure if I'd have been the guy to want to work there. We were kind of all grinding, and then the task or the challenge for me as a leader is to say, okay, well, what are the baby? I'm not going to beat myself up. What are baby steps that I can do this quarter that make my place of work a more compelling place for other people to join me and work in? And you're not going to bite the entire elephant off in one quarter, but do something meaningful. I don't know. I'm curious. How do you view that, man?
That's the whole thing right there, I think. Like the reason I'm doing this is because I hated my job. So,
Yeah,
why would I go recreate something that I hate or that somebody else hates? Like we have a choice here.
that's
And,
right.
if you just have some intentionality, it's not actually that hard. I'll tell you when it sort of clicked with me. I was like I said, I made all the mistakes in hiring and
Yeah.
managing people, and I was I had a bad hire, and eventually I had a few more, and then eventually I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? And so I had to really think about what I was doing, and it's kind of a long story short. I realized I wasn't buying somebody's time; I'm selling them an opportunity. And so it's like, I'm in sales, and recruiting and team building is marketing. So okay, well, first rule of sales is know your customer, right? So what do I know about these people? And so as we've talked about, I hired staff in the Philippines. So what do I know about Filipino freelancers? Well, I know they go from usually contract to contract to contract, being treated really poorly by jerks. You know, they're looking for some stability. They're looking for something a little bit more purposeful, right? So, okay, well, let's start there. And, you know, even being a nice person is a selling point, right? And so if first of all, yeah, find the great people, but I mean, it's pretty simple, you know. Um, I don't think it's that hard to make a place that people want to work at. You create an environment that people want to be. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but
Well, but I love the internal locus of control there, where like really the realization might be, wow, maybe I'm the one making this workplace the monster that I tried to leave 10 years ago when I left my job. So I think I've never met a business owner that I've been close with. I don't know all of you guys out there, but I've never met somebody I've been close with that hasn't had seasons of their company where they wish this was going better. They wish the culture was more fluid. They wish that people were
Mhm.
more connected and engaged. So like just realize that's normal. Like this isn't a like just wake up and be 100% better. But I do
Yeah.
think, is like to your point, like an ounce of intentionality in creating the kind of place that just makes you want to come to work. I just have seen it over and over again create a ton of value. And it's more fun. It's more fun to work in
Yeah.
those.
And I know the feeling of like, okay, well, let's have Zoom happy hours, and then that's fun for a couple times, and then it gets kind of stale, and you're like, oh, this feels really forced. But you know what? Ask them what they want. Ask
Yep.
them what they want to do. How can we? I mean, it, what's going to work for me is not necessarily going to work for you. I do find that if you can meet in person, like we do
Mm,
retreats in the Philippines, which is amazing.
yeah.
That really is a very big relationship level up when you meet in person, and you have no agenda, right? I think a big mistake if you're going to do a retreat is to have some agenda like business planning or something like that. No, 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 no. Just go chill by the beach. Do whatever's fun. That'll have a bigger impact.
Man, that's such good advice. Well, hey, I want to bring this episode to a close here, Isaac. But the question I ask everybody as we close each of these ROPs is just kind of getting personal here for a minute, or for the way you manage your personal productivity. Is there a practice, a habit, a hack, a rhythm that you would say, guys, if you would just chew on this one a little bit or give this a shot. You might find an outrageous ROI in your life.
That's hard to really say. I can tell you what I like to do. Some things I could say: go snowboarding, find some something that takes your mind off of everything, where you can just be at peace outside. Um, I like to go for walks. That's really if I didn't go for walks almost every day, I would be so frazzled and just kind of yeah. So that's something that helps me.
Hey, listen, sometimes it's the simple stuff. I love it, and I'll add to that hack that I also like going for walks, but I have practiced the discipline. I don't need 100% here, but a little bit better recently, Isaac, of just leaving my phone not
Mm,
with me when I'm walking, and I
yeah.
have found that the quality of my thought life, my ability to disconnect from the noise and just think, meditate, pray, dream, all of those things become more possible after about 10 minutes
Mhm.
outside without electronics. So, for what it's worth, maybe you try that as well.
Yeah, and I'll say I do hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I love to go for walks and listen to podcasts or audiobooks or something like that." And I think, "Ooh." I mean, hey, you do you, but for me it's like, "No, I need to disconnect for a while here."
And I've done both. Like, I'm definitely that guy that if I was going to the gym, I would probably like listen to a podcast or something. But I think I'm increasingly aware that me trying to double and triple task and do things at the same time, multitask, like I do better with at least once a week getting a nature walk that is just free of any kind of noise. And I'm never regretting that. So, Isaac Smith, Team Up. Been a great guest to the show here, man. Thank you for joining. I'm going to make sure that whoever, whether you guys are listening to this on one of the podcast feeds or you're watching us here on YouTube, we'll have links to learn more about Isaac and his company. And if you're looking for help or support, especially hiring Filipino teammates the right way, Isaac might be your guy. Isaac, anything else for the good of the group before we close today's episode?
Ah, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome, dude. Grateful for you, man. Thanks for joining us. And then again, for you guys, Isaac and I, we both mean this. You've made it 40 plus minutes into this episode. Your time is valuable, and we just want to say thanks. So we hope you glean something that really, in a tiny way, changes the trajectory of your company and your life, because that's what gives us meaning, right, as entrepreneurs. So until we see you next week, hope you kill it. Thanks again for joining Return on Podcast. Cheers.